And with that, we'll move on to today's session, which is titled Fear to Empowerment, an intergenerational discussion on HIV. I'd like to introduce the moderator of today's panel, who is Jessica Lauber. She is a prevention coordinator here at Caraconference, and she will be leading this discussion today. So I'll hand it off to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Adam, for that introduction. I do appreciate that. We are joined today by our panelists. We have Carl, Ryan, and Kaylee here today joining us. All three of them have took a lot of time out of their busy schedule to share their own personal insight on an intergenerational discussion around HIV. So welcome, panelists. We do appreciate you being here with us today. I would also like to take some time for the speaker to share some more about themselves, where they come from, and what brought them here today. So I will turn it over to each of you if you would like to share just a little bit to the audience. And if you would like to go ahead and start your cameras for Carl, Ryan, and Kaylee, that would be perfect. Thank you, Ryan, Kaylee, and Carl. We'll just have you turn on your camera, and whoever wants to start first, I'd be happy if you all want to share a little bit about you.
I guess I'm the first one because I got unmuted and everything first. I was going to tell her to go first, but I'll go. So I grew up in Kentucky, born and raised in Kentucky, but at 18, when I came out of the closet, I left home, and I ended up living in 11 states, 21 cities. Before I moved back to Kentucky, I was in San Diego, California. So it was a big difference when I came back to Kentucky in 2020 when COVID hit. And when I moved back in the first 6 months, I was unaware that, like San Diego, everybody got tested every 3 to 6 months. That's what I've always been used to, and that's what I've always done. I never even went 6 months. It was like 5 months and 29 days. I was always tested. I didn't know in Kentucky people weren't getting tested. And I contracted HIV within 6 months of moving home to Kentucky. And in November 20th of 2020, I was diagnosed with HIV. Due to the fact that everyone I've had partners in the past pass away from complications of HIV, and I was born in '84, so my entire life was in fear of HIV. So for my biggest fear to come true, it was hard, but I decided I wanted to do something about it, and that's why I became public. So I came out on social media, and I went public with my status.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story with us. Kaylee, would you like to go next?
Sure, absolutely. So, hello everyone. I'm Kaylee. I am 38 years old, and I was born HIV positive in 1986. My status wasn't discovered until 1993 when I was 7 years old. My school flagged me as possibly being beaten because I had bruises all over my body, and I had to get a physical to prove that I wasn't being beaten. And I had ITP, which is an opportunistic infection. Just to broadly go over it, where your platelets are being attacked by your immune system, and it's just basically what elderly people get, or someone with an AIDS diagnosis gets. So after they found out that I had ITP, thinking that I might have leukemia, they found out I had ITP. I had a HIV test, and I had 7 T cells. So I was diagnosed with AIDS in 1993. It was the 90s, and stigma was huge, and I was closeted with my status, and I grew up with just a lot of stigma, and knowing that there's really ignorant people, and also there's educated people that will accept me. So I had to balance 2 different worlds. HIPAA also was a huge thing in my life to know, need to know basis. My school and my community did not know. It's only the people that needed to know, my doctors and my immediate family, knowing universal precaution and people should treat someone with universal precaution was just the mindset. And it's everyone else can go screw off. It's a luxury to know your status. I've been speaking about HIV and AIDS since I was 18 years old, and I got out of the structure of school where I had to be closeted and, scared of everyone in my business, which like is just a terrible thing. And I love speaking into microphones, and anytime I can, I would do it, but I was camera shy, and I got over my fear of being camera shy on the eve of my 34th birthday and came out on the internet with my um, IG account, AIDS Baby 86, which is like a play on words because you equals you. It's like, what AIDS? Like, AIDS, get out of here. It's like, that was my diagnosis. So like, I wear it on my sleeve to break stigmas and just really have people think and like drive it home, because people think like, adult issues. It's like, I grew up, hearing everyone's commentary. And it's like, I want to create a different structure. So that's like basically my goal in life, is just to make the world a little bit a better place by making people think hard. Like, think about that. Take a time out and think.
Thank you. I think you have a really interesting perspective and how you really took a lot of light to it and really tried to shed a lot of education.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Jessica. This is like my highlight from going on Instagram and making that happen. I was able to get interviewed for a WebMD article like about a year into it, and I was quoted saying that HIV is an acronym, and the first letter H stands for human, and that's been like a really like, it's people are like catching on to that, and like that's the whole thing that has been in my mind. It's like, all right, cool, are we all gonna die? Like, I'm a human, you're a human. Like, genitals are genitals. Like, what are you guys talking about? Like, HIV doesn't discriminate, and that's like my main push of things. And like, yeah, get tested. Like, the fact that you think that HIV is only like, it's stigmatized to gay people, I think is a detrimental thing to society, because I think it leaves a huge population that does not get tested, like men that are cisgender, that, there's anal sex is anal sex. It's not pertained to just homosexuals or whatever. Like, and like, how about we just dissolve sexuality and get that, contemptuousness out of our minds? But yeah, sorry. Don't want to take up all the time.
Absolutely. I read the article. It was amazing. So I really appreciate you bringing that up and sharing what brought you here today. Carl, if you would like to go next, we would love to introduce you before we get started on some of our panel questions.
Sure. My name is Carl Fox. I was born in 1958 in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've lived in the area all of my life, a few short stints away. I was diagnosed. I was exposed in June of 1985. I happen to know the persons that exposed me. I was seroconverted in September of that year, and I was told by Michael Ritchie at the health department at that time, he's since passed from AIDS, that I should put my affairs in order. I had about 2 years to live, and that I should apply immediately for my Social Security. It was an instant on at that time, and that I should go out and relax and enjoy the rest of my life. I was 27 years old. It stunned me. And at first, I just stayed at home. I didn't understand enough about it, I guess, and I was freaked out. And so I didn't want to be around people. It was my friends who finally convinced me to come out and be amongst them, that they weren't afraid of me. And then later, as I started to understand the disease and as I started losing friends, it became obvious that I had to speak up. And I could see right away that ignorance of the disease was killing people, literally. And so since that time, I guess it started, my late husband, Greg, became sick in June of 1990 and died in July of 92. At his funeral, I brought him out and I brought myself out. I had been out a long time, but professionally at our business. And I made it a point to speak about HIV/AIDS as often as I could. We got involved with many organizations. I owned Rosie's Tavern at that time. In fact, My late husband was diagnosed with full-blown AIDS the day we started that business. And but after he died, it became imperative to me to speak about it and to speak openly about it and to not let embarrassment or shame or fear stop me. I lost over 200 friends. I used to keep a list of them, and I reached 204 the day I tore it up. Every time I read through it, I'd just have a nervous breakdown all over again, and it became too much. I didn't want to forget their names. They were dying so fast. Uh, in the 80s, I was going to 3 funerals a week. Sometimes it's just stunning now when I think back at it. And so it was just how sudden it was, how fatal it was. And the fact that your doctor is telling you to put your affairs in order, told me it was hopeless, and hopeless, and I didn't want it to be. In fact, a year after I was diagnosed, I went in to see my personal physician, and I was angry about it all. And I walked into her office one day and I said I had decided that I wasn't going to let AIDS kill me, and she couldn't make me. she, she said, "Well, I don't want you to die of AIDS. I'm just afraid that you are." And I said, "Well, we're going to stop that talk because I've decided I'm not."
Oh, yeah. It seems like you have really, with today's topic being from fear to empowerment, I think you, especially along with Ryan and Kaylee, would have a lot of insight on how PrEP and U equals U have changed your experience on HIV. And I feel like that's a little bit of like what you're kind of getting to. You talked a lot about the stigma. And I am curious from all of you on what you think on how PrEP and U equals U have changed your experience with HIV.
I'll talk. So I think that from being a child HIV cocktail trial therapy at NIH for protease inhibitors and AZT3TC DDI, like the first cocktails and the second cocktails, I've heard like in 5 years we're gonna have a cure. In 5 years we're gonna have every single year, and I'm just like, oh my god, like can we just stop saying that? Can we just stop it? Like I've heard it all my life, and it's just like stop saying that, just stop. Like I love the optimistic, but why are you saying? How about like we're close? How about just say we're close? Don't like put a time on it. But the U equals U is like the most, I think, powerful message because it's easily digestible and it can be run with, and it's like planting seeds, and like it's so empowering to know that like your status stops with me, and I completely understand that people that I date and I like and I love, they come from people that also love them, and to have fear and preconceived mind viruses from stigmatized information from the 80s and 90s and even 2000s, and now they're still in their head, and it's like to dissolve that and to help that, it's just like we're a community, and like to get that message out there is so huge. I think I've ruffled a few feathers with people of how I feel about PrEP. I think PrEP is like a very dicey situation because of management and adherence, and the HIV is a pretty smart virus and does more. So like I've heard, in passing that people refer to PrEP as like the gay man's birth control, which is just fucking infuriating because I was on those cocktail trial therapies, and like to reimagine there being a time when like we don't have drugs, like we know we're in a pickle with antibiotics not working, to see and project like another generation of children having to do HIV cocktail therapy is like it's a nightmare. Like it's like I really think it's a dicey situation because human error is definitely a base of science, and scientists know that like human error is a part of medicine. Like people mess up all the time, like so it's just like to widely give out life-saving medication for like I need that. Like, it's like I want my drugs to work, and I want drugs to work for people that, do become positive. Like, instead of like, well, we don't have any more drugs for you because there's a super drug is terrifying. And it's just like, I think we need people just to have like a mindset out there. And it's just like, to do PrEP, we're also only stigmatizing again HIV. Like, what about cancers? What about other things that are in the mix that are health related? I don't know. That's sad. But I do think PrEP is so
Now,
important
for me,
for
oh,
sex
sorry.
workers. Like, I'm so sorry, Ryan. Like, I'm like 1000%. I think sex workers should have access to it. I don't at all discriminate or have hate towards sex workers. I think they're probably the population that is the most educated about sex. Like, but having this like fear, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get AIDS, like I need to have this, and I like, oh, my friend's scared of AIDS, and then here's some pills, because that's what people do. They share medications, like, and it's just like that's a really scary medication to share. Sorry.
No,
All
don't
right, pass the
apologize.
mic.
Don't apologize. You shared some really incredible insight on that topic. I think Ryan would like to chime in next, so I'll turn it over to you, Ryan, and Carl, if you want to join after that.
So with me, like I was diagnosed, like U equals U came in 2016. So I didn't contract and get diagnosed till 2020. So it was my reality from the beginning. And I'd known about it, but in Kentucky, I don't know. I mean, Cincinnati and Kentucky pretty much run it together right there anyway. But in Kentucky, especially the rural Kentucky, people don't know and they don't believe it. They don't, even with the science, even with other, it's not spread enough for it to do a lot here yet. Like I know it can, and I'm grateful for it because it's a big changer for all of us. It's just getting that message out there because in Kentucky, there's people that are positive that don't know about U equals U, and that's like awful. But I think it's because the providers they're not educated about it and they're not getting that message out there. I don't see that a lot. With PrEP, I'm kind of with her on that. It's like I was trying to get on PrEP when I got diagnosed when I got HIV. So that year when I moved in 2020, I was trying to get access to PrEP, but I was having those barriers where the providers were like, I don't agree with that. I don't, that lifestyle, you need to go somewhere else. Like they'd send me somewhere else. So it's, that's kind of another thing with PrEP. It's like I tried almost for a year to get on it before I got HIV, and I had 2 negative tests that year. So I'm kind of agree. I think it's dicey and it's not like even yesterday, I missed my meds 4 times ever, and yesterday I missed my HIV meds. So it does happen. It's human error. Like I'm not gonna lie, I've had it 4 years and I've missed it 4 times, but I have like a little tracker thing, so I knew I missed them. But yeah, missing PrEP, it's like resetting and it builds the drug tolerance and all that. Oh, you want to say something? I'm good. You can take it.
No, thank you. I think you make some really good points on getting the messaging out there in regards of U equals U, making sure everybody is familiar with it, and some really knowledgeable stuff that you mentioned about PrEP as well. So thank you for sharing. Carl, did you have anything you wanted to mention in regards to PrEP and U equals U and how it's changed your perspective within HIV?
Absolutely. It's interesting because when I was first diagnosed, there wasn't anything. And so they couldn't really offer anything. They told us to go home and relax. Probably, I guess, 2 years in is when I was offered AZT. I was put on AZT at 500 milligrams a day. After about a month and a half, it made me very sick. And so I pulled myself off of it without telling my doctor. When I went back in, they were very upset, but I refused to get back on it. I had an opinion back then, and I still hold it today, that I'd rather have 3 good days than 30 bad days. And so the 2-drug cocktail then was next. I was put on that as well. Again, I got very sick and was taken back off. Well, I took myself off of it again without telling my doctor. Again, when I saw my doctor, they were very upset about it and tried again to get me back on it. At that point, I refused to take any more medicine until I was lucky. I was what they called a long-term survivor. My viral load was not, they didn't test that back in those days. That was done long after I was infected. What they relied on was your CD4 count and my CD4 count was always good in the high normal. It was only when they dropped below 250, they put me on antibiotics. I was probably about 10 or 15 years in at that time. And my partner, my husband, and I sat and talked about it and decided that, and that was just about the time they started checking for viral load. And so I had gotten down to 4 T cells, and my viral load, they tested it, it came back at 8,000 copies. And so at that point, I was put on a 3-drug cocktail, and which is, I guess, what they call it now today. I don't know, but the current standard, I'll put it that way. I responded. It did take quite a while. My T cells finally rebounded, and I was able to come off of the Bactrim because they had me on antibiotics constantly. And my viral load went to undetectable and has remained so. As to as far as being treated, how I was treated, things have changed absolutely 1,000%. Back in the day, it was treated as if when they found out I had hepatitis C, the gentleman wouldn't treat me for that, said, "What's the point? You're HIV. You're going to die anyway." Literally, a doctor told me that. And so the attitude towards you and towards patients has changed dramatically. As to the meds and the PrEP, the biggest thing that I get concerned about with the medicines, and I didn't fully understand, is the side effects and the long-term side effects, because these are meds I will be on probably for the rest of my life, unless they do actually have a cure. And so those have to be looked at. The first drug cocktail I was put on gave me neuropathy, which I still suffer from today. I've had to come off of many different drugs because of side effects. I won't go through all of them, but that's the problem, right? And so when you look at the PrEP, I know that PrEP has some of those medicines that I've had to come off of because of what they did to me, did to my bones, did to my kidneys, etc. And so I worry when I see so many people take the PrEP. And when I talk to the people when they're taking it, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not. If they're going to stop somebody from getting infected, I'm all for that. But I don't know if it's being sold exactly what it is. It is an extremely dangerous drug regimen to be on, and I think it should be limited. If I was married to somebody and they were HIV, then I may choose to get on PrEP. But, there are other ways. And safe sex may not be fun to a lot of people, but safe sex is better than brittle bones. And so that's where I would put my opinion on PrEP and the medicines, that they have to be taken seriously because they are serious and they have serious side effects.
Thank you, Carl. You actually led me into my next question, so thank you for that. My next question that I was going to ask the panelists was, how has your experience been with the medical system? I think a lot of you have touched on it a little bit, but I am just curious on if that's changed and hopefully changed for the better, or, what gaps are you still seeing that you would like to see medical providers talk about more? So anything in that regard of how your experience has been with the medical system, if anybody would love to touch on that first.
Well, I'll start if nobody cares. Because I have to say, my experience with the medical community has been interesting. I guess good overall. They've saved my life. I'm still here. But it is amazing. I guess the biggest thing that I've learned in this whole experience of fighting HIV/AIDS and all the different things that come with it is how sadly ignorant a lot of doctors are. And I some of that ignorance is willful. And so that has frustrated me when I've had to go to doctors. And at times, I'm informing them of things that I found out on TV, on the internet, on something else. And so that, I guess, has been my biggest frustration at times. I don't want that to sound like that's the majority of it. The majority of the healthcare industry has treated me beautifully. From the very beginnings, when my late husband was going through AIDS and dying from it, they would allow me to bring our dog in and sleep in his bed in the hospital, which I just thought was remarkable at the time. And so that they did not have to ever do. I've had other ones that treat you very differently. But overall, the majority of the doctors and the care providers have been nothing less than angels. But yeah, a lot of ignorance and a lot of education is needed still.
Absolutely. I think you worded that beautifully at the end. So thank you for sharing. Ryan, Kaylee, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
A lot of times, I don't think people realize, like, we notice the way you react. Like, they step back, like, you still see a lot of that in the medical system, like a whole lot. That's why a lot of people fall out of care. Like, you treat us differently. I see you treat us differently because you know I have HIV. Like, when I go to the emergency room, they'll stand outside the room. Like, you're a doctor. Like, how are you that ignorant? It's really disheartening because I think it keeps some people out of care because it only takes one person that we notice, and we notice your body movements, we notice your body language, we notice those things because we have HIV and we notice we're treated differently. I see it too much, and it's really upsetting because it's like you're in a medical system, like you're working in the medical field. I don't care if you're even in infectious disease, you should still be educated and treat us not like we're diseased because that hurts. Like it really hurts, like my core, because I see it and it breaks my heart. I've fired a couple of doctors already. I'm really big on firing them. They don't agree. Like I want off medicine, and you don't take me off of it, I will leave. I will go to the next one. So I fired like 2 doctors. I already have neuropathy as well from my medicine, and I'm on the new meds, and I got neuropathy, and it's rough. The side effects are not. I'm glad I don't have the side effects they get on ECT and all that, but I already have neuropathy, and I'm 40 years old. So, and I've only been on the meds 4 years.
Absolutely. I think that when you
That's
mentioned,
fake.
oh, sorry. Yeah, getting clients into care is the most important thing. So I'm really glad that you touched on that. And, we want all doctors to make any clients feel welcomed, not judged, stigma free. So thank you for sharing. Kaylee, did you have anything you wanted to touch on that?
Yeah, totally. I feel blessed that I'm at UCSD and my doctor, I've been with her for like 20 years. But, there's times when, she's on vacation and I have to see someone that's different. And in like July, I went to my clinic and I had a different doctor filling in for her. And I had an abscess on my gum from a root canal, and my face started to swell. And it was like a Friday, and I was doing like a comedy empowerment, sharing stories like HIV positive people in my community, like doing like a highlight. And I was like, I can't go on stage with this like, a little bit of a swollen face, but it's only gonna get worse because it's Friday and it's my gum and I have an abscess. So that's why I'm there. And I literally am, sharing my story to the doctor, and she's like, okay. And she goes out to go get the other physician, and I can literally hear them in the hall just like talking about they think I have herpes on my gum or it could be HPV. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, I can literally hear you. So it's a HIPAA violation. Like, I'm like, why? Like, just completely disturbed by the fact that like I can hear this person. And then they get in the room and they instantly go grab gloves, like just like pull on gloves. And I'm like sitting in the chair, like, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, and I just stopped the woman right there and I was just like, is Tari Gilbert there? Which is a not a physician's assistant, nurse practitioner that I'm familiar with. Yeah, and I love her. Yeah, I was just like, is Tari in there? And then like the lady's just like looking at me, and I'm like, I refuse to see you as my care provider when you do not respect what I'm saying or anything like at all. Like you are saying zebra when you hear hooves when you should say horses. So please, I'll wait for Tari. And she had her arms folded and just like stared at me. And I was just like, I don't know why you're having this moment where you won't, give me some space. And she finally left because like I don't know. I think it's really important to stand up for yourself. And there's like an abuse of power. And like, I don't have any time to like have you, I don't know, do a million different cultures on my gum. And like, why do you think it's herpes? Like, what the fuck? Like, it just like completely disrespectful. Like, yeah. And yeah, long story short, I got everything that I needed. Like, but I think there's just like this lacking of actually listening to someone and respecting the fact that they know what they're speaking and knowing about, like they're knowledgeable. And I understand if I was coming to seek like, I don't know, pain medication, but it's like I'm trying to get augmentin. Like, like what the fuck? But yeah. Um, and then another time, same tooth when I went to the dentist. The dentist, like really sweet, he was like, you're undetectable. It's totally fine. I'm like, yeah, my viral load is undetectable, but I still have like, lacking of T cells. So it's like, it's a balance. It's not just like, oh, you're undetectable, you're good, you're fine. Like my body is still does not have a fucking immune system. So there's like there's like a disconnect. Like it's like, yeah, I am normal, but I'm not. Like I won't pass on my virus, but my body's immune system's not right. So it's just like that's there's two parts, like that need to be understood.
Thank you for sharing that. I don't think that's something that a lot of people maybe think about. So thanks for sharing that with the group. And I also really like how you talk about advocating for yourself. I think that's really great. I do have another question for the group that I'm curious. I wonder if any of you have been involved in any clinical trials, and what role do you think such of those trials played? So I will turn that question over to you all.
Well, do you want me to start? I can start.
Yeah, you go first, Carl.
Go for it. We'd love to hear if you can involve though.
Well, I definitely, I was, I mean, they started with the trials when I was just starting into this. So, ACT is funny because the very first drugs weren't really, I think, tried. They saw that it did something and they weren't sure what to do. And so the first medicine I was put on was ACT, a 500 milligram dose. That is considered a fatal dose now. And they have learned that AZT, if you receive it at all now, is a very tiny fraction of amount that they used to give. And then there were several trials that I went on. And one of the things that I learned very early, and it bothered me, if you were one of the ones that, because you may or may not have received the treatment or the drug, and you don't know until after the trial is over. Unfortunately, in the early days, there was a protocol that if you were not getting the medicine and you were failing, and the people that were getting the medicine were doing well, they continued the trial to its end. There are people that literally died because, as it was told to me years later, in fact, the latest trial I was on, which is the study for a cure right now, it's called the Trailblazer study. That's the one I'm on currently. Before I would even get on that, I asked my doctor, I said, what happens if halfway through the study, they find out that it's working for some and not for others, and that the ones it's not working for aren't getting the treatment? Will be unblinded? And he knew exactly what I was talking about. And he said, yes, we've changed the protocol considerably. Now, if somebody is failing and we see that the drug that's being tested is actually working, we immediately unblind it. We put the person onto those medicines. If we find out during this cure study that the treatment is working for some, but only those who got the full treatment, any of those who are not getting the treatment will be turned over to it. And he and I talked about it because I think my late husband died as a result of that. I think he died as a result of having to get, as they said, they needed all of that information. And I get it. From a medical standpoint, from a science standpoint, I understand it. They needed to find out what worked and what didn't. But that sort of left ethical standards out of it, in my opinion, and certainly compassion was not part of it. As the studies progressed, I noticed it got better about that. But yes, at the beginning, and occasionally still, I feel more like a test dummy, a mouse. that in the end is fairly expendable, and all they really care about is what the results are. And that's a hard thing to come to in one's life. When I first got on the first studies, I believed that the whole idea was because they cared about me, and they did. They did. But what they truly cared about was the information, and I guess it should be that way. And so the interesting thing over the years is understanding where exactly I am in that study and that research. Luckily, I would say that over those 4 decades, what I've seen is compassion and ethical standards have played a better role. I'll leave it like that.
Thank you, Carl. Kaylee, Ryan, is there anything that you would like to touch on as far as clinical trials go and being a part of them or anything in that regard?
I've never acted about this. I'm not. I'm still pretty new, so I have not been tested with anything. I do have one comment about Biktarvy. A lot of these medicines are still technically in trial when we're on them. They're not. They don't know long-term effects. They don't know what's 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So we're still all kind of still on trials. But I found out with Biktarvy, I started gaining massive weight. Like I'm active, I eat well, and all of a sudden I started going whoop, 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 whoop. I gained like 40 pounds. I did the homework. I went to scientific studies and stuff. That tenofovir, I'm just saying avoid it. Because tenofovir, that's the thing that it causes massive weight gain, and they didn't notice it until they started getting more healthy people being diagnosed. Because most people would get an AIDS diagnosis, but me, my CD4 was 657 when I was diagnosed, so I caught it within a few months because I was tested every 3 to 6 months. So that's newer, and a lot of doctors still aren't aware of that. But Biktarvy will cause you to gain 100 to 200 pounds in year 1 and 2. So I'm anti-Biktarvy. That's great for some, but no, not me. I want to divide though.
I mean, I love everything that Ryan and Carl are saying. The fact that, yeah, these drugs that we push out, there's like a new 1 pill a day, like, injectables. It's like, we are the experiments on it. So it's just like, I don't know, to me, I take 2 pills to keep my AIDS at bay. And I was on the HIV cocktail AZT, 3-TC, DDI trial at NIH, and then the protease inhibitors in the 90s for the children. And it was the wildest time to experience, 3.5 years at NIH because I got kicked out of the protease inhibitor study. But, drugs affect people in different ways. Like the DDI, AZT, 3-TC study, when, as a child, you're in a trial at NIH, like you stay across the street at this, Ronald McDonald style housing called the Inn, the Children's Inn for families and the people, because you are there for like a week and a half. You wake up, you get ready, you go across the street to the hospital, you have like an itinerary. It's just like, go get, IV, and then you're going to see the eye doctor, and then you're going to go, have something ultrasound, and then you're going to have some Stroop tests. That's your itinerary for the day. Like, it was very interesting to like have this like relationship with my body and like to be around people that were researching my body, and I really like loved that. But it was such a mind fuck to see a girl one time when I was at the eye doctor, in my appointment, she walked into a wall because it was making her go blind. Like, and that was just like the most fucking horrifying thing as a child, to see someone that's on the same study as me. This thing just made her go blind. Like, oh my God, am I going to go blind? Like, and to also have, a doctors, authorities tell me, like, take these drugs, they're going to make you feel better. And then I'm like puking. And it's just like, whoa, I'm pretty sure I felt fine before I took these drugs. Like, this is like a very, like, feel I was great before I took these drugs, and now I'm throwing up. Like, I'm going to tell you that these drugs are not mixing with my body. And, like, come to find out, my mom was a lesbian, and we had friends that were adult males in the adult trial therapies, like up in same building at NIH. And I'm taking the exact same dosage of these men. Like, it's like, I'm 7 years old. I'm like, I don't know, 50 pounds. Like, why? Like, vitamins. Like there are no dosages that are the same for a child to an adult, and that was just like so offensive, like as a person. And that's one of the reasons why like I really have a feeling about PrEP, because like PrEP and all drugs like have Truvada, and it's just like, yes, you're welcome, everyone. Like me and my people and a lot of a lot of us died, on these studies. And like the children, it's just like, reimagine the children. It's like people have such hatred to like people like, oh well, it's you deserved it. It's like, no one deserves that. That's a really gross thing to say, first of all. And there's also children. It's like you're creating this atmosphere of gross. It's just like we need to actively see and hear ourselves and what we are saying. And I think to me, I'll do any study like at UCSD or whatever that's like a Stroop test or like a survey. Like I am not about to ever take any experimental drugs ever again, like ever again, ever again. And like I feel that there are some things that are predatory in that aspect. There are some studies I see where people get like $100 for a spinal tap, and I'm just like, audacious. Like that's an audacious amount, little amount of money, and like the risk to be like, oh, we're just gonna do a spinal tap, it's gonna be fine. Like it's what? And to piggyback off what Carl said, with medications, I went back on my HIV medication. Like I basically lived in like my 20s, like I huge drug holidays. But I started to date this architect, and he went out and got PrEP after like a week of dating him. And I'm like, I don't even know if I like you yet. Like I know, like, cool, like way to be like fast, like, but I don't know if I like you. Like, do I would even want to sleep with you? But it made me really think and put it in my mindset of my mind that like HIV is mine. Like if I handle my HIV and my HIV is undetectable, like there's no way of you getting HIV. So like there's like a disconnect of someone not believing in science. Like if they want to be on PrEP and me have HIV, like I don't, that's the I have us covered. And like that is so important to me to, have that. And yeah, I don't know. It's the fact of like how drugs are important. Like drugs are important, but they're also they're not something to just like, oh, this is great. Like it's a tic tac. It's not a tic tac. Like it's not a tic tac.
Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. Ryan, did you have something you would like to add?
Yeah, I wanted to say, like, just off her, I'm bouncing off of her now. Treatment and prevention, I think, is what they need to focus on more. Like, U equals U needs to be focused on more than PrEP. It's safer as long as we are managed, we're undetectable, which I've been undetectable since I was diagnosed. I've never transmitted the virus to anyone. I know who transmitted it to me. I've never transmitted. So it's like that needs to be focused on more. Because I mean, I think that's the key. They're focusing and putting too much money on PrEP. They need to focus more on U equals U and the treatment and prevention.
Yeah.
I think it's so important they don't even have U equals U and the Oral Quick at home testing kit. Like it's just like that's the most important jargon to know and be empowered with. It's like there's management, and it's just like so huge. And like that message, like it's so easily digestible, and to have that out into the world, it's like look it up. Like whenever I travel and go to airports, like I have U equals U on my bag, like my carry-on, because I never check a bag. But like people are always like, oh, U equals U, like what does that mean? I'm like, oh, it's undetectable is equals untransmittable. It's an AIDS thing. Tell your mom. Like I love saying that to people. And it's just like, and if they see me, it's like they know. It's just like, yeah, same team. Like we're strongest together.
Absolutely. Does seem like a lot of people know about PrEP, and then when you say, oh, do you know what U equals U is? They're like, wait, what? So
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on that. For definitely needs to be spread that message more. So thank you for
It's so beautiful. It's so beautifully. It's so beautiful and empowering. Like it's the most empowering thing. Like how could you be scared of anyone with their HIV if they're like, it's so empowering. Like everyone, like it's like I want to scream it through the rooftop. Like U equals U. Like so huge.
It is.
If I could Could I add
Oh,
something?
go for it.
The
Absolutely.
one I want to bounce off Kaylee a little bit. I hope I'm saying that right. Anyway, I think it made me think about. I don't want people to think I'm against PrEP. I'm not. Anything that works to me is important and should be looked into. Um, what I notice sometimes is younger people who will, I guess, express because they're proud or whatever that they're on PrEP will say, "Oh, I'm on PrEP. I don't have to worry about such things." My husband and I have been together 28 years. He is not on PrEP. He is negative, and I am positive. At the risk of being too candid, I'm going to say some things here. We look at our risks. We look at what we do. Uh, um, Sexually, physically, everything. I think I'll leave it there without getting into too much detail. But you're looking at what your risks are. And so if somebody thinks that PrEP is like a protection, a shield, hey, I take this and I'm all good and it has no side effects, it has no problem, blah, 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 it's great, which is what I see some people doing, then they may not take the necessary precautions that should be there whether you have PrEP or not. And so that's the only thing that I worry about with PrEP is that some people think of it as, oh, it's a cure, it's an answer, it's perfect, it's whatever. No, it's a treatment and it does work. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a treatment, but it has real risks and it should be treated as a risky treatment. That's all. That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Yeah, Brian, did you have something?
I think I'm going to throw in. So I have a few friends that have been on PrEP that have gotten HIV while being on PrEP, and also even the injectable PrEP. I know people that have been on it and gotten HIV. So it's not. I don't think it's as effective as they say it is. But I mean, it's still risk. I mean, you have some protection, but you got side effects. So it does
And
still
what about
happen.
the risk?
So I think more the same.
And like, what about cancers and all these other things? It's so upsetting. And I think PrEP really stigmatizes HIV. And then again, to have the general population, fucking with the effectiveness of Truvada, which is the holy grail, which is in every drug, which is, you're welcome, everyone. Like, I was on those NIH trials, like, put in that work. Like, you are so welcome. Please don't fuck with the adherence. Like, and even with the PEP, what about the medical providers? And there's also PEP and PrEP. They came from the same thing. And to have like a super virus that does not, that has sensitivities to the drugs that we need, like, oh my God, like that sounds like a fucking nightmare. Like that sounds like a nightmare. Like I literally, like, someone posed this question, I think 2 days ago, like about PrEP, and like all I could think about is like, yeah, like the childhood trauma, and like I do not want any child or anyone to have to go through those fucking trials yet. It's fucking atrocious. Like people do not understand. Like they like remember us, like think about it, like, and they don't. Like the disconnect is so disconnected.
Absolutely. I know it is 12:51. We're having a really good conversation. I'm happy to keep this going. We have until 1:15. For everybody, if you do have to leave at 1, we do want to respect your time, and we do hope to see you tomorrow. I would like to bring it back because, like I said, I'm enjoying the conversation that I'm having with all of you. So my next question will be, how has prevention messaging and advertisement changed over the years? Has it changed from more fear to empowerment? Or just overall, how do you all see that messaging changing? Ryan, did you have something you'd like to add?
So I'm dying. Um, so when I was in the 80s, like I remember, I don't know if Carl remembers it or if Callie remembers it. It was the bowling commercial where the Grim Reaper there was like a bunch of people standing up and the Grim Reaper would roll the ball and he would hit people, knock them down. And it was like, I just remember fear was instilled, like everything I saw, everything I heard. The gays go to the big cities, they go to San Diego, they go to California, and they get the AIDS and they die. Then they go to hell. That was the messaging I got as a child. So I knew from young, like it was fear. It was definitely fear. And now you see the commercials, like F commercials and all that. It's there's so many. I feel like it's like every other commercial is someone about the pill, and which I'm glad, but it's sometimes that's all you see. It's so much, but it is more powerful for seeing that it's changed a whole lot because it was fear. It's like don't get AIDS, don't be gay, don't be all these things is what I was getting when I was younger.
Well, if I could add
That's
something
all I
there,
got.
Absolutely.
I would end with Carl feels the same way that she does. Yeah, no.
well, it's interesting because I agree, as Ryan said, um, in the early messaging, all you got was avoid it. If you're gay, you need to repent, save yourself. Uh, I know that some people would call it God's wrath. My mother referred to it as gay cancer. And so the messaging was all over the place. Certainly, the messaging, there was no messaging of hope. I really cannot remember any messages of hope, like, okay, well, we're working on it, or hey, there's long-term survivors. Because for me, that's one of the things I couldn't understand. We're all supposed to die. I was told, get my affairs in order. I'd be gone in 2 years. I went home, laid down in the bed, and figured every morning I'd wake up and a piece of me be laying there in the bed. 6 months later, I'm waking up feeling the same way I did as before. And I'm realizing that, hey, this doesn't necessarily work that way. And so that was the messaging I got at that time. We weren't, but messaging was screwed up even before that. I was in 6th grade when the idea of sex education came to our area. I lived in Clifton in Cincinnati. They had announced at school we had to take home sheets to have signed by our parents. They were going to teach us sex ed. We went home, had our documents signed. My mother wanted us to learn sex ed. We came in, handed in our documents that morning, and I remember the teacher sitting there gathering up our documents. And literally, after she has them all in her hand, sitting on the podium, she said, "Well, I know you all think you're going to sex ed this morning, but she said, I've decided it's immoral. And so you all are going to have a study hall instead." So I never officially had any sex education at all. The closest thing to it would have been biology class in high school. And so that was the messaging we were being fed all along. It's immoral. Don't talk about sex. If you are talking about sex, you're evil, blah, blah, blah. Oh, if you got this, well, you're definitely evil. And that was your message. You should have changed before you got it. I will say, with all that doom and gloom, it has been very interesting watching the ads of today. Both the things telling people to be careful. I don't see that doom and gloom. What I see in general is respect. And then some of the commercials I think are a bit strange, but I'm old. And so for me to see two guys or two women in some of these commercials, the way they're acting, and they're not acting abnormal, I think what sort of strikes me as so weird is they're acting normal. And we're finally seeing it on TV. And so, when I see the ads today, I think that's the most interesting thing. And I'm glad for it. I'm glad for it because it's important. Everybody's seeing these ads, not just me, not just people that need them, not everyone. If everyone is getting a different message about how we're just as normal as the other, oh, look, they're out having dinner. Oh, they're flying a kite, whatever, that makes all of us part of the community. And I think we're treated differently as a result. So to me, it's very important how the messaging has changed. And I think it has helped in the long run. Has all of it been perfect? Of course not. But it has helped in the long run. That's what I think about the messaging.
Thank you, Carl. I really liked how you used the word respect in what you were mentioning. I thought that was really powerful to see how that, maybe people who are living with HIV feel more respected in that type of sense. So like I said, it's 12:57. One of the last things I would like to end on, is there anything that you would like, is there any takeaways that you want to leave with the audience?
I'll go ahead. I mean,
Sure.
I see my picture up there. I was going to let everybody else go first, but I think it catches me real fast. The biggest thing is hope. Uh, when I was first diagnosed, there was none. I was told to put my affairs in order as a 27-year-old man who felt absolutely strong and fine. Told to go quit your job, to go retire, relax, enjoy your life. You're about done. You know, it's amazing to me that there wasn't more people like me who just jumped off a cliff. And so I think the greatest thing that I've seen over the years is the hope. You have to look for it. You do. It isn't necessarily presented to you. But I still hear from young people, and it does break my heart. We own a bar, and so there'll be young people, college age youngsters to me, come into the bar. And sadly, over the last 5 years, I'm not going to try and pinpoint it too much. Over the last 5 years, I've had at least 2 customers come to me and inform me that they have become positive. My first feeling is sadness because I know what they're going to face, but happiness that they're facing it now and not when I did. Uh, but they seem hopeless, which surprises me. Uh, I guess it's the shock of getting what has been called so often a fatal disease. But I feel very hopeful, even at my age, and everything I've been through. Uh, I suppose the biggest fears I have is the side effects and what the long-term use of these meds, which are experimental still. But hopeful, yes, I feel very hopeful. And so that's what I've tried to express to any of the young folks. It's easy to look around at everything going on today, everything, politics, everything, and lose hope. If you're as old as I am, and I know to some I'm not old, I'm 66, I feel like I'm 150. And maybe it's the experiences. But the things that I've seen is that we go through hard times always, always. The 1918 pandemic, the Holocaust, I could go on and on. There are difficult times always. The things that get you through is the hope. And so that's what I would like to leave people with, is that you have to have hope. It doesn't cost any more than not having it. And it certainly makes you feel better. And I believe there are real reasons.
Thank you. Thank you for leaving that with the audience. Ryan, Kaylee, is there anything that you would like to leave with the audience today?
I would say, with like, yeah, like hope, compassion, empathy, and like kindness, like are like huge. Like those are like my main things. Like Carl said, like hope, because it gives you something to, achieve. And when you have compassion and empathy, like you have the ability to actually care and listen and, share. And we're all storytellers, and like that's what people need, is people to interact and speak to them, and have actual information travel correctly to make it, better. Because yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is make it better, because HIV in America is, leading the way in STIs. So it's just like, we have to do something about it. And, thank God the CDC finally, included every sexually active person 13 to 65 to get an HIV test annually. Like that's the CDC recommendation. But if you go and look up the recommendations for all the other STIs, chlamydia, gonorrhea, it's only given recommendations for women and men who have sex with men. There's no recommendations for men, like cisgender males. So it's just like, are they the golden children? Like, I don't know. So it's like, we really stigmatize HIV hard. And it's like a gay thing, and like women, it's like, I've always been like, with advertising, HIV could happen to you, was like a commercial I saw in the early 90s, right before I found out I was HIV positive, with Magic Johnson and Maya Bellick. And, like, yeah, it can happen to you. Like, it's just like, that was the messaging. And then, I also saw all the awful things. I was like, oh, like, why are they putting these like awful mind viruses out to people? Like, this is damaging. Like, Like we have so much power to be damaging and not damaging. And I don't know, we gotta get our power back.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ryan?
Mine would be I don't know if it's because I was new, like I guess I'm still somewhat newly diagnosed. I'm in my first 4 years, and I mean it's pretty new. Um, and I think it takes a while to get like to be considered like I'm not long term. I'm not a dandelion, which is what we're with. We've got long term survivor and a dandelion, and I'm the newly diagnosed. I would call me, but I see so many young people getting it. Like there's so many like a guy I was talking to the other day. He just got diagnosed 2 years ago. It's still happening to these young kids, and the biggest thing that irritates me is we can stop it today. Today, I shouldn't have even got it in 2020. We have the resources to stop it. Why are we not doing that? Like in Kentucky, there's 30% of people that have ever been tested in Kentucky, leaving 3.2 million people in Kentucky that do not know their status. Come on. Like, go get tested, know your status, help us in this. Because that 3.2 million is the ones that are not helping. And they're the ones that should treat us
Yeah,
differently. Like, they treat me like I'm a walking plague.
Absolutely. As I say, yes, getting tested is very important, and I do feel like we have the resources, so we really need to be educating everybody so that everybody's aware. Is there anything that I haven't asked that any of you all would like to speak on? I know we kind of covered a wide variety of different things, but I did just want to open that up to you all one more time to see if there's anything that I haven't asked that you would like to speak on.
I just wanted to say, bouncing off Haley, we're human. We need compassion and love just like everybody else. When you treat us, we see the body language. I know both of them know they've seen it, I'm sure too. We notice when you don't use our silverware or don't use our glasses or you do something, we notice it. We may not say anything, but we notice it and it hurts.
Oh, I also want to, yeah, piggyback on the fact that, or that I do a piggyback. Bring up HIV is not a crime. There's 32 states that still have really stringent HIV laws on the books, and California, where I live, has passed a disclosure law in January 2018. It's State Bill 239, and it basically dissolve the fact that you want to sue someone because they didn't tell you their status. Because in California, the 800 cases that were brought to trial, zero of those cases actually resulted in a transmission of HIV. So, knowing your status and not needing to like blame someone, like, did you talk to that? Like there might be a person out there, like a unicorn person that is wanting to give HIV to people. And that is not the majority of us at all. And that is a completely different thing. Yes, I know firsthand stories of people in marriages where that happened, and that is not necessarily a crime against the world. That is definitely something that, yeah, the marriage needs to be resolved. Like, I don't know, but that does not need to target all of our people. And like, yeah, like it's very important to know your status, not blame people. Like,
I love that you bring that up, Kaylee. I think that's really important. So thank you for that. Carl?
I mean, if you don't know your status and like there's a huge law, like it's preventing, like it is a barrier to even want to know your status if you could be criminalized, like yeah.
I understand.
The only thing I would add at this point is I wanted to say to Kaylee that I'm sorry. I can only imagine what you went through as a child. At the risk of sounding really stupid, I think that I was lucky that I had it happen when it did. My childhood was very hard, and I can't even imagine having to have then face this. And so I'm so sorry you had to go through that as a child, but I must say, what a fabulous young lady you've become. So you stick with it and don't ever, just hang in there, girl. Hang in there. You got this. And Ryan, you may have been late to the party, honey, but you're as welcome as anyone else, unfortunately. And I don't know if anything I said would be considered offensive to you or to people who maybe were late to this party. I certainly don't mean anything that way. To me, it's sad that in 1985, I was exposed, but I knew better. I participated in activities that I had been avoiding, I'll put it that way. But today, knowing that where we are and there's still people being infected, it breaks my heart for so many different reasons. But that's not to say that anybody ever deserved this. There was one other thing I had heard that one of you said about, innocent. I think Kaylee had talked about it because, I thought it was interesting. One of the first things I remember seeing on the TVs and on commercials, especially on the news, and pundits love to talk, and they would always refer to children or people who received their infection through other than sexual means. They were the innocent victims. And so they'd be referred that way on the news. I found it really offensive at times. Saying, well, another innocent victim because they got it through, transfusions or something like that. And I'm glad that a lot of that stigmatization is gone, because in the end, we are all a victim of a disease. Nothing more, nothing less. It isn't how we got it that matters. It's the fact that we do have it, and how do we fix it? And that means, how do we treat those with it, and how do we treat those without it? So that's all. It's not something that should have ever been a guilt thing.
Absolutely.
think-
You have something you want to add?
Oh yeah, no, I think it still is like, the innocent victims. Because when I speak, people are like, oh, it's okay, you didn't get it. Like, it's like, since I didn't get it, like, what are you talking about? Like, I have strong Buddhist beliefs, so I do believe I picked my parents, but at the same time, like, so you're saying that's my parents' fault? My mom wanted me to become HIV positive. Like, what are you saying? Like, again, like, what are you saying? Like, it's an awful thing to say. And like, Carl, when you said like, yeah, I'm sorry, like it made me teary eyed because it's like, yeah, like just to be able to recognize like like what I went through, because most people don't put themselves in people's shoes. And like, I don't look at myself as like, I don't want people at all to ever feel bad or get guilt or shame from my experience. I want them to be grateful. It's the gratitude that, it's like, I am not angry that I'm HIV positive. And I never told my mom, like, oh, fuck you, lady. Like, I'm HIV positive. So I was like, oh, and I see the guilt and the shame and the hurt that came from my mom from having that. It's just awful. And like the perpetualizing and having that jargon of like, yeah, innocent victims, like, oh, you didn't deserve this. Like, you're saying that the people I love deserve this. Like, stop. Like, stop that right now. Like, Carl didn't deserve it. Ryan didn't deserve it. No one of these people deserved it. They're living life. Like, you crashed your car because you deserved it. Like, fuck off. Like, straight up.
Thank you, everybody.
I do want to say my biggest fear. Oh, can I jump in? Sorry. My biggest fear. So I said HIV was my biggest fear, but it did become my biggest blessing, because everyone I've met that is living with HIV are the most amazing people. And it changed me in a way that I wouldn't have changed had I not gotten it. It made me a better person. And I think the most amazing people are those of us living with HIV. There's something we go through that changes us all.
I love that. I feel like you ended that on a really positive note. So thank you for that, Ryan. This is a very valuable discussion. I know that I really took a lot away from it. The chat is popping off on a lot of really good comments and things like that. Panelists, you have shared some really great insight, and thank you for being vulnerable today. Audience, please help me thank our panelists by maybe sharing one thing that you took away from today's powerful discussion. I am now going to turn it back over to Adam Riley, who will be closing today's conference discussion. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jessica. And thanks to all of our panelists. That was an awesome discussion. I think you can tell from the chat that everybody agrees with that. So that's great. Thank you so much for being with us for Caracon 2024.